I, like the entire staff in the chamber today, and you for most of this time, have endured this last hour. An hour that's very similar to the hour we had yesterday on the very same topic, with the very same motion, to have the very same amendment passed in the Defense Authorization Act. Mr. President, I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee. Prior to you presiding, I was presiding. I was honored to sit in that chair and watch the chairman of the Armed Services Committee from Oklahoma and the ranking Democrat of the Armed Services Committee talk in glowing terms about each other and the bipartisan effort that has led to a National Defense Authorization Act that has considered 807 amendments to this point. As we sit here, 40 more amendments, 20 by Republicans, 20 by Democrats, are being hotlined for further consideration for hopefully tomorrow's final passage. The National Defense Authorization Act has been greatly debated. In fact, the most debated bill that I've been part of since I got here. Not only that, but the amendments that are represented in these 807 are almost nearly equally divided among the two parties represented in this great chamber. And what we've been witnessing tonight is a diatribe of, in some cases, fantasy. In every case, an exaggeration. In many cases, a fabrication. And this good senator from Oregon has shown us pictures of what democracy looks like. I don't disagree. We are self-governed. It is the exceptionalism of America, is that we're self-governed. But democracy also demands protocol in this chamber, the most deliberative body in the world. And without any warning, without any heads up, here we are dealing with a unanimous consent motion on an amendment that's already failed to get unanimous consent just in the last 24 hours. On a bill that's already been debated for weeks and months. This included bipartisan amendments across the board. And then we're confronted with this breach of not only protocol, not only just, well, let's just say common decency and respect for each other. But I do agree with the senator from Oregon on this point. He's right. We should have the debate. And that's why it's too bad that his amendment wasn't allowed to be debated on Senator Tim Scott's Justice Act. And the reason it couldn't be debated there was because he and most every one of his colleagues on the Democratic side, other than three, filibustered against Tim Scott's police reform bill. I don't think they want a solution. They want to have this crazy rhetoric demagogued all day and all night wherever they can have it demagogued. And they want to blame President Donald Trump for the actions of criminals. Now, I've heard it all when I've heard from the Senate floor Antifa referred to as the what do you call them? The anti-fascists. The anti-fascists. That's a way to sugarcoat thugs. So, Mr. President, for these reasons, and I could think of dozens of others, but I'll spare you all and the staff this late night, but getting any later, I object.
And the senator from Oregon's post-cloture time has expired.
Mr. President,
Senator
I'd
from
ask
Oregon.
unanimous consent to speak for 5 minutes.
Is there objection?
And I'd invite my colleague to stay if he'd like to, and yield to him if he wants to jump into the conversation.
I think we've had enough debate.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak for 2 minutes.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, I don't object.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. My colleague has said that the facts I presented tonight are fabrication, to use his exact word. He's called it a breach of protocol. He's called it a violation of common decency. I think we are here as a chamber to address difficult, important issues in America. This is a difficult and important mission. This is a new use of force in a manner that doesn't belong in the streets of America. It's important that we debate it. I would be happy to have it be a standalone bill, come up right after this Defense Authorization Act, have it debated for 2 hours and voted on, because then we actually have a conversation and we have to take a position and our constituents can see where we stand and folks could propose an amendment to it if they didn't like the way I've written. It's so simple. It says do what we have always done. Put ID about where you come from. Have a unique identifier and don't go sweeping through the streets if your mission is to protect a federal property. Stay at that federal property or work with the governor or the mayor if you have a broader effort. Those are reasonable things. I don't think that it was a breach of protocol to ask this chamber to consider that on this bill because there is a connection. We're talking about a bill that involves the use of force and how we govern it in America. I don't think it's a violation of common decency. My colleague does. And I would prefer that we actually have that conversation about the facts and about the arguments, about the simple solution I proposed, when we can actually take a vote or other people can offer amendments to it and modify it. That's this chamber doing what it should be doing. And so I'm disappointed that my colleague is blocking this from being considered before this body. I do love this body, and I first came here when amendments were freely put on the floor.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Dakota.
Mr. President, I'm just going to reiterate my final point one final time, and I promise not to take more time than the gentleman from the senator from Oregon. He had his opportunity to have this amendment considered, debated, and voted on in the Justice Act introduced by Senator Tim Scott, a bill that dealt specifically with police reform. It would have been the perfect place to have the debate, except that my colleague voted against cloture, so we couldn't even proceed to the bill. I don't know how we could have made it any easier or better. In fact, when we took up the Justice Act, he and his side were provided at least 20 debate opportunities or 20 amendment opportunities. We could have had the debate he seeks tonight at the appropriate time on the appropriate bill. And I am sorry that we didn't do that. Perhaps after tonight's episode, he and his colleagues will reconsider. And perhaps before we are done this year, Senator Scott's Justice Act could be brought to the floor, and we could have an adult discussion, debate on amendments and the bill and all kinds of great ideas right here in the most august body in the United States. I hope that can happen. With that, I yield the floor and wish you a good night.